2. And welcome back to another episode of the All of the Irish podcast. Today we're joined by John Davis. John, how about you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a comedy sword fighting stuntman, fight director, action hero, comedian, and all around good guy.
I believe the last bit, but the other bits are a bit hard to believe. You know, as Thomas said earlier, like when you were 10 years old, that's everything you wanted to be. So fair play to you. I say your 10-year-old self is very proud.
Well, I'm still my 10-year-old self. I never grew up. That's why I still do the things that I do.
Well, they're amazing. But yeah, and you did all of this after getting paralyzed.
Yes. When I was 22 years old, I lifted up a box of clay. A friend of mine was a professional potter. I lifted up a box of clay in his van and twisted, and my upper body separated from my lower body, which left me paralyzed. Doctor told me, they took me to the hospital. Doctor said, well, John, you've got a condition known as spina bifida occulta. I said, Gesundheit. And so I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. And we went on, and he told me I'd never be a stuntman, I'd never be a fight director, I'd never have a physical career in my life, and which I find just ridiculous considering what I've done now. But while I was lying in that hospital bed, a friend of mine gave me a book called The Tao Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee, and it talked a lot in there about his philosophy of martial arts. And being a martial artist myself, it was a really apropos book for me to read. Mm-hmm. And I ended up really getting into his ideas of being like water, his mental flexibility. And so what I was able to do was able to leverage my present moment and turn it into a win, the actual thing. I went on because of my struggle there. I came out of it with what I call the action hero mindset. I can do anything, and I know I can do anything, right? And you can be in a fear state and be a reaction zero, or you can be an action hero. And so I decided to be an action hero. And then what I did was I went on to do over 4,000 live comedy sword fighting shows all over the world.
Like you're saying this stuff like it's just normal, but I guess to you it is.
Well, to me it is. I'm 56 years old. And that was when I was 22. So I've lived a lot of it already. So,
and you have to overcome a lot to get to where you are now. So like my big question when we first got in contact, I obviously didn't ask you. I just think to myself, like, how did he recover from that and get to do what he's doing now? Or how'd that happen? How'd you go about it?
That is a great question, and it's actually been it became a life study of mine. Actually, when I first started studying that book by Bruce Lee, which, by the way, when Bruce wrote that book, he was lying in a hospital bed himself, being told he would never do martial arts nor lift weights again. And he actually did all the movies that we know Bruce Lee from after that. So it was very inspiring to me. This is a sort of a parallel situation. Bruce and I have a lot in common. We both have rock hard masculine bodies, and he has a 6-pack. I have one giant 1-pack. He went on to do great things. And so to me, it was an amazing situation. For then I started studying how the brain works and how that mental flexibility he talked about works with a lot of our other responses. And so I studied in neurolinguistics. I studied hypnosis. I studied all kinds of different mind patterns and brain science and how we overcome and thrive during adversities like that and traumas. And so over the course of the years, I've gotten really, I've toned down all of the information into a very simple pattern. And I call it the 5F system of achievement, but it's all about coming through those sorts of situations and leveraging your present moment and coming out the other side, not only surviving, but thriving.
Well, you certainly thrived. It's cool to see similarities with yourself and Mr. Lee there. What martial arts do you practice?
I took a Shorin-ryu and Taekwondo. And if you see the videos on my website, you'll see me doing my nunchuck stuff that I do in all my speeches. I do nunchucks and whips, and I do swords. I do all kinds of things. But in my corporate speeches, I use whips and nunchucks.
What was the first martial art you said there? I've never heard of it.
Was they?
What was the first martial art you mentioned? I'd never heard of it.
Shorin-ryu?
Yeah.
It's a Korean style. It's like Ishinru, Shorinru. I don't know if you've ever heard of
I'm
either.
still a bit lost. Like if it's not in the UFC, I don't really know about it.
It's an older style. It was very prevalent in where I grew up in Delaware on the east coast of the States here.
Mm. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, the martial arts scene in the United States. You find everything. You find absolutely everything.
So are you a martial artist yourself?
I used to do, it's not really martial art, kickboxing. I used to do that here. I got to my purple belt with a brown tip, so I gave up because I couldn't get the brown belt. That's how it went.
Oh really?
And then tried Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Then gave up, moved on to archery.
Oh, nice. Are you a good archer?
World champion.
Oh, are you really?
No joke.
Well, that's cool. That's awesome. That's fun.
It's still technically a martial art, but
yeah, absolutely.
I tell you what.
I heard the pride in your voice when you said it too. World champion. Yeah.
Yeah. I tell you what. I'll teach you how to use the bow properly. You show me the nunchucks. Deal?
All right. Yeah.
Shake on it. Deal.
Anytime. I'm shaking.
Perfect.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, martial arts are an awesome thing. We talk about them all the time. Like, we fanboyed out something awful when we had UFC Fighters on before. Because you do martial arts, do you ever watch that kind of stuff?
Oh, all the time. And as a fight director, it's kind of something you have to do. You have to watch, because the interesting thing is I started in stage combat, but then the more I moved forward into film as well, you learn there's two different things you got to learn. Number one is the fact that when you're on stage, you're choreographing for hundreds of people in your audience, and for film, you're filming for one set of eyeballs, mm-hmm. the lens, and so everything changes angle wise and everything else. But there's been an evolution in fight choreography over the years. Because if you look back in the '60s, if you'd see a sword fighting movie, they were doing saber fencing with broadswords. Mm-hmm. They were doing a really interesting light sword style with these giant swords. And then in the '60s and early '70s, people really started to dive into historical swordplay styles and the manuals, and started incorporating it into it, which is really interesting, because in the early days of incorporating the historical styles, the fights got worse because they didn't look right and nobody really understood the styles. But now with HEMA, you know what HEMA is?
HEMA.
Not familiar.
HEMA, Historic European Martial Arts. It's a new sport that's coming up. When they're
Where they fight in the armor?
They fight in armor. They fight broadsword, rapier, daggers. They fight quarter stabs. They fight all the medieval and Renaissance weaponry, and small sword as well.
We had a guy on before who does that. Jack Pinson. He's like Ireland's only bow maker.
Oh yeah.
Or bowyer, as they call themselves. And yeah, he was telling me about that before, and I thought he was absolutely mad.
Yeah.
That's crazy stuff.
So anyway, I teach at a workshop every couple of years in Canada, and what that workshop has done over the course of the years is you have all these fight directors coming, but you also have all these HEMA guys coming, and so you get this collaboration of all these fight directors and the HEMA guys sharing the historical manuals and the historical styles. And what you start to watch is, if you start to watch the films that are coming out now with swordplay, all the swordplay now is starting to get real historical style in it. And it's starting to get, that's why the fights, you'll notice, have gotten so much better over the years. It's like you go back to the original Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And okay, the original Star Wars movie, they got those two-handed lightsabers, right? But if you watch Alec Guinness, when he's doing his parries, he's parrying it like it's a small sword. He's like, tick, 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 like this, right?
Yeah.
The next movie, they brought in Bob Anderson. Bob Anderson is he was a saber fighter. So suddenly you got this whole big motion. And by the last one, you had all the big katana work and all the so over the course of the years, the fight styles have gotten so much better. Really interesting.
Well, you can definitely see it from Star Wars films, even in the evolution of
not really in the most recent
fights.
Ones.
Oh no, you could definitely see it maybe in the
prequels.
Yeah, the prequels.
That was like the pinnacle, like that final fight with Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Well, I'll tell my friend Kyle you said
that. Oh, you're friends with the guy?
Yeah, well, my friend Kyle was Count Dooku's stunt double. He was General Grievous' stunt double.
Oh,
and
wow.
He's a named Jedi Knight. If you remember in the prequels, the Coliseum scene when they're all there and Obi-Wan and And right behind Obi-Wan and Anakin, there's a Jedi Knight wearing a brown robe with a ponytail, long hair, and he got some good screen, full screen shots too. His name is Kyle Rowling. He's a very good friend of mine. He's a fight director out of Australia, and he actually has his own action hero. He's Jedi Knight Joe Claude Danva.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'll make sure. Yeah, you should have him on sometime because he'll tell you some funny
I was about
stories.
to say I'd love to have him on. That
That's
sounds awesome.
interesting.
I've never spoken to a Jedi Knight, and I presume they're pretty cool people, even though there's that whole thing about them bettering the Republic. We don't really bring that up though, because this whole thing, man, politics.
Yeah. Send him a case. Send him a case of Guinness, and then wait until an hour in, and then ask him about George Lucas.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Yeah,
that'll be a good show.
Something to consider. With yourself and doing these, I guess, fight choreography. I mean, how do you do it? Like, we've no idea how you do it. Like, what you're like? All right, you swing that way, he swings that way, and don't kill each other.
Well, you start every piece of choreography with what the story is and what the characters are, because your job as a fight director is twofold. Number one, well, before any of it, it's safety, but as a storyteller, it's twofold. Bring about the director's vision, because the director is the person who is molding the story. So you can't come in there with your own ideas about what the story is, because the director might have a different vision. But number two, you also have to look at the characters and where the characters are in not only their story arcs, but in their skill levels. And then when you choreograph, you have to choreograph in such a way that it tells the story. Like, for instance, in martial arts, a lot of the martial arts that you see in the world, the motions are too small to be seen. You know, they're just too, they're not storytelling. And so stage combat has to tell the beginning, middle, and end of each action so that the audience can see what it is. For instance, I'm going to punch somebody, I'm just going to punch somebody, right? But in stage combat, it's cue, throw the punch, right? I want the audience to see the fist before I throw it, right? And so you got to tell the beginning, middle, and story of every action so that the audience can follow along. And that sometimes you do want to have the beats, tempos, and rhythms of the fight go faster and slower, just because that tells the story itself. So, like, for instance, if I was doing a stage production of Romeo and Juliet, and I had Tybalt and I had Romeo, and they were fighting, Romeo is the younger guy who doesn't have as much skill, and the whole play talks about Tybalt being the butcher of a silk button, which is actually a historical reference to another sword master of Shakespeare's time, but about him being a great sword fighter. So when you choreograph that fight, you give the most basic moves to Romeo, and you give the most advanced moves to Tybalt, and you make it look like an easy fight for Tybalt until his rage takes him. So you have to follow the storyline along that way. Then, of course, you have to know actually how the weapons work, you know, and then you have to teach those processes to each of your actors.
And is it easier to just grab a stunts guy and be like, okay, wear a wig, look like that guy? Or
no, it's easier if you bring in actors who can fight. There's a mentality difference between stunt guys and between film and stage. You know, in stage, you want to create something that's repeatable for multiple weeks. In film, you want something that looks great that day, and you know after that day, it doesn't matter. You're not gonna do it again. So I just did an interview with a good friend of mine, a guy named Bron McGash. I don't know if you know who that is. F. Bron McGash. He was the sword master for the Highlander TV series.
Highlander, yeah.
And he was telling a story about the main character of Duncan MacLeod was an excellent martial artist and an excellent sword fighter, and they would give him choreography in the morning that he had to have up to speed by the afternoon to be filmed. Whereas in stage, we rehearse for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we instill all this stuff of distance, placement, timing, and safety in the process so that it all works out so they can continue to do the fight multiple nights.
Wow. Yeah, you don't think about it like that at all. For film, it's literally just make this one perfect.
It's almost easier.
Oh yeah,
maybe it is.
Well,
like I've done theater, and like you're right. Like it does take ages. Like it's even without choreography, and then with a film, oh that would look good. Do it again.
right.
Maybe do it 3 times. You're done.
And a lot of times, if it doesn't look good, they'll just move the camera closer, and then it's just superfluous movement that looks like a fight's going on. And so that's why you look at it's been one of the things that I really hated about some of the modern films, the new filmmaking is that they use so much motion and so much jitter and so much close, you actually don't get to see the intricacies of the fight work. And the director doesn't necessarily understand the story arc that the fight choreographer might have in his head. And I know fight choreographers who worked on major films who got really angry at the director because after they choreographed and after they shot the whole thing in the editing room, the director changed where those pieces of fight were and changed the entire story arc of the fight. So yeah, it's an interesting animal. It's a much different thing. When in stage, you're getting the same performance every night, hopefully.
Yeah.
No, you'd expect it. For
right.
Stage,
right.
You know, it's like.
But I'll also say this: there's any film that you have seen that has had a fight in it, I guarantee someone bled at some point. Someone could, because they're much more rough and tumble. The mentality of a stuntman is much different from a actor combatant. They want to prolong, they want to act first, and the combat is part. It's called a special skills actor, right? Yeah. In film, you got to come to your set with those skills, but be able to work like right away and jump right in. Now, like the John Wick stuff, that's amazing stuff. Those guys train for months and months and months and months and months and months, and they get their stuff together, and then they film that one day. You know what I mean?
You should see the day after, like when they're getting all the dead bodies out of there. Jesus, I know Keanu Reeves is a method actor, but come on. No, that's some like the most realistic shit you'd ever see. Like the way they make him just maul through lads.
You ever watch the YouTube clips of him training with the guns?
Yeah,
he's actually good with them. He really does that stuff really well.
He's a beast of a guy anyway. Yeah, he's definitely unique. But when you're talking about like, the fights not really being up to scratch, what kind of movies are you referring to? Because I thought about like Marvel movies, for example, like whenever like they have like a CGI heavy character fighting, it's very much like you said.
Well, and CGI is an interesting animal because when you see a CGI fight, in most cases, there's been an actor in a green suit with buttons all over his body doing that fight, and they're creating the character over that. Sometimes that's not possible. And like, well, the thing that really gets messed up is like when you have Mark Ruffalo playing the Hulk, right? And he's supposed to be now 5 feet taller than he was before, or 3 feet taller than he was. And so now the actor's got to try to act as if Mark's up there. Now, a lot of times they'll put Mark up on a box. Well, that limits his foot movement, right? So there's all these moments, but then you have actors like in Lord of the Rings, you got Andy Serkis with the button suits there, right? But if you've ever seen the outtakes of him doing the river scene where he's chasing the fish, he literally threw himself on the rocks and went down this river hunting for this fish. And I was like, man, there's no way he came out of that without bumps and bruises in a big way, because of the way he did it. There's a lot of crazy commitment that happens in film that doesn't necessarily happen on stage because that's a different mindset.
Oh yeah. Didn't Tom Cruise like break his ankle or something?
Yeah.
Mission Impossible 5 doing that stunt.
Yeah. And you can see it on film too. He does the jump from one building to the next building. And he when he hits the building, he breaks his ankle, and then he climbs up and runs out of the frame. And they shot him in sequence. So when you see him get up on top of the building and actually start to run, there was a cut between the jump and between that when he got up on the building. But when you see him get up on the building, he starts to run. He's running with a limp. He's barely able to walk. It's really, really interesting. And of course, Jackie Chan, he's always got all those clips at the end of his movies with all his injuries and damage to his body. That man's held together by pins and needles right now.
Or like your man Sylvester Stallone, he broke his fucking neck.
Oh yeah, and with Stallone, didn't shut down production.
Like, how old is he when he did that? Like,
he was
early 70s, late 60s?
Well, he was late 60s at that point. He's
wow.
in his 70s now. He's still a beast, though. Holy smokes.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I mean, holy smokes.
imagine having that as like your granddad. Holy fuck. We're heading off to see grandpa and he's fucking, he's like that. Jesus.
I just saw a video the other day. He was talking about when people come over to date his daughter.
I was about to mention that.
You open the front door and you see Stallone there. It's like, holy smoke. He puts the fear of God in him.
I was about to say, like, his daughter's boyfriends must be like, just nah, I'm good. I don't want to. I don't want to take on Rocky. I'm good.
Or Rambo. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like he's some of like the most iconic, manliest, I guess, protagonist who've ever been on the screen.
Right. Did you ever hear the story about the people breaking into Dolph Lundgren's house?
No.
You can find it.
Yes, I've heard this one. Yeah.
Yeah, they literally broke into his house and they were going to kidnap his wife, and they were in there and they're breaking and they're messing with the house, and they looked over and they saw the picture of Dolph Lundgren and realized whose house it was, and left because of the picture. Oh my God, it's Drago! We got to get out of here.
That does sound pretty terrifying. That is not.
I mean, imagine turning around and seeing that's the house of the person I'm robbing. It's like some John Wick's house, you know.
Imagine. Oh my God, that's just leave. Run.
Oh, nice. No, yeah, that would be my reaction anyway. If I'll send out rob houses. I'm just like, you know.
Yeah. Tom's just years of expertise.
But the next time I'm robbing a house, I'm going to make sure I know who owns it first.
Yeah, you got to do some research. Unless you get some some menacing 10-year-old that sets up traps and shit in his house at Christmas.
Oh yeah,
I think you'll be fine.
There you go, nice.
But tell us a bit more about your show. You know, you go around with swords.
I did a comedy sword fighting show called Hack and Slash. It was a 2-man comedy sword fighting show. We started out with Renaissance festivals all over the States here, and we started doing those like everywhere, and then we ended up doing a show in Annapolis for many years. We became a headlining act there, and I don't know if I told this story already or not, but I'll tell it anyway again. You guys can deal with the edits of it. I literally on 2 days before September 11th, I had 2 guys walk up to the stage after a show and say, "Do you want to do USO tours?" We're like, "Sure, we'd love to do USO tours." So Monday, the September 10th, 2001, we dropped our packet off at their office at the Pentagon, and then Tuesday was September 11th, 2001, and they shut down all their offices, and then 3 weeks later, they called us up and said, "Can you go immediately?" And we said, "Sure, we'd love to go." And we went and did from November to February that year, and then we did another USO tour every year for 6 years, from 2001 to 2006, and we ended up doing a total of 28 countries with that show. That show had everything. It had sword fights, had whips, it had beds of nails, it had high falls, it had amazing, crazy things, and dives over each other's backs, and it was a really fun show. And then when USO tours were going, we ended up bringing other performers in and adding to the show, and we were flying out to bases that when the government was saying don't send troops into the Anbar province in Iraq, we actually performed on every Marine base in the Anbar province at that time. And you want to hear an interesting story about that trip?
Sure.
Okay, so towards the beginning of the war, there was a town called Samara, where the Shia attacked the Sunnis mosque right outside the town of Samara, and the U.S. has a military base right next to that town. And we flew in to do our show. It was 4 of us. It was me, my comedy partner, 2 other comedians. We flew in. Now, they used to fly us around that country with 2 helicopters, 2 Blackhawks. And all of our equipment would be in the front helicopter. We'd be in the back helicopter. So we flew into the base. We landed. We all got out, got all our stuff out. The helicopters leave, because if the helicopters stay on the ground, they become a target, right? Now, this base is what they call a forward operating base. It's so far forward that they don't have a dining facility on the base. There's no cafeteria, no place to eat. So what they have is a truck where you go get your food, and you're supposed to scatter and not congregate as a group, because that group becomes a target. So we got our food, and we went over and we found a Humvee, and we climbed up in the Humvee and we ate our lunch. And after our lunch was finished, we got all dressed, went over and did our show, did 2 hours of comedy and sword fighting and whips and nunchucks. And I had one guy up on a ladder doing lasso work and juggling and crazy stuff, right?
You just do it all.
And, for 2 hours, right? And then show ends, we pack all our stuff down. They haul us back over to the flight line where the choppers are going to land. 2 choppers come in and land. They throw all our stuff in the front chopper. We climb in the back chopper. The 2 helicopters take off. The rocket-propelled grenade goes underneath the helicopter I'm sitting in and hits the Humvee I had lunch in.
Fuck.
And then, because we were the only helicopters in the area, we went searching for the shooters. And we never actually found them, but that was a very surreal experience, doing circles over this town with a door gunner hanging out the side, ready to take out whoever's out there. But yeah, it was that was not the only time we had calls like that. Fallujah, I was talking to a colonel. I said, Colonel, we wanted to do more bases down range, and I finished the word range, and a bomb blew up off to our left. And the colonel just turns and looks at it. He says, son, you can't get further down range. You know?
Jesus.
Yeah, we had some interesting stories. But you know what? I would go again right now, because
really.
Oh yeah, right now, because the soldiers out there go through what they call Groundhog Day. You know the movie Groundhog Day?
Yeah.
Okay. Every day seems like the same day, only every day someone wants to kill you. Okay, so they're under immense stress, and so for 4 guys to show up and make them laugh for 2 hours is huge. I had one soldier say to me, he says, Mr. Davis, this morning I was in a firefight, and this afternoon for 2 hours I was able to forget all about that. And so, it's the least I can do for somebody who's putting themselves in that kind of danger. The least I can do is go make them laugh for a couple hours. I'd go right now.
Man, that's so fucking cool. Thank you, man. Like you probably don't even know what the effect you have on like these people. Like you probably make their whole fucking their year sometimes. You don't know. Like,
you can't see it here, but I'm sitting in my office, and my wall of pride is over here to my left. You can't see it, but it's got about 30 plaques on it from different military bases. They're called certificates of appreciation, thanking me for coming. I have an American flag in a wooden case. It's triangular. They're usually given out for funerals and things.
Yeah.
But I performed in Qatar, or the mispronunciation is Qatar, but it's Qatar. That's how they say it over there. And on that base, we ended up doing a great show. And 2 months later, I was in Annapolis, and the guy walks up to our stage with this flag and a plaque. And this flag has been suborbital in U-2 spy planes. This flag has been on a couple of bombing runs in drones over Iraq. And so that's all authenticated in a plaque. We lose Jer again.
Oh, Christ. Just.
Well, let's just keep going.
You know what, man? I'm not even gonna end it again. He knows he's in trouble. And
sorry, Thomas, I'm on the phone to your mom. Give me a second.
Funny guy. Listen to this guy. You think he actually talks to women? He lacks the ability. Anyway.
Yeah. So this, like I said, this is my wall of pride over here too, because I have all these amazing stories from all these soldiers. I've got letters from all of them, and like I said, as much as they say I've done for them, they've done far more for me. Because whether you agree with the wars that they were in, those are people who have volunteered their lives. So we have an all-volunteer military in the United States. All right, they volunteer their lives to go anywhere in the world to defend me. So it's like, that's how dare I not do something back for them? You know what I mean? That's kind of how I see it.
No, it's really like I live in Ireland. We don't really have a military, but I know the sacrifices that the military makes, and all militaries across the world, like they
huge. And not only the people who are serving, but their families as well. I mean, their wives and their kids are back home. The wives are taking care of all the kids while the husband's away, or vice versa. Sometimes it's the husband taking care of the kids and the wives away. You know, it's a very interesting group of a very interesting, a bad word, very brave and strong group of people that are military. And I still do local events here. I've done. Last year I went and did the National Guard here locally. You know, I flew to California and spoke at the Navy bases out there. And it to me, it's one of the most important things I can do in my life is to do that kind of work. You know, right after, that's probably the second to raising a good son. You know, I have a son, and my life right now revolves around making sure he's not a dickhead.
Yeah.
Well, hope you don't have too much work in your hands there.
Well, he's been good. He's been good, and now that he's about 3 inches taller than me, he's been lording that one over me pretty good.
Wow. I had a point now. Oh yeah, has your shows have probably been affected by COVID? Are you planning to like do more as soon as you're allowed
it's
to?
Interesting.
Or?
As I got older, I decided that I should stop wearing tights because I don't think it's a good idea. Right. So, and nobody really wants to see that anymore. You know, really. Honestly.
You don't know.
But I ended up taking all the stuff I talked about earlier, the mental trainings and thing I did, and I created a program called the 5 F's of Achievement, which is basically how to hack your fight or flight response and achieve more in your life, basically. And I speak in corporations now, so my job right now is a keynote speaker. I go out and I take all of my background and I have brought it into the workplace to help them get past their own adversities. I still do technical stuff for stage and film, and I still go out and do those things, but I don't do them nearly as much now because I feel like I have more impact in a broader sense. Because right now, the stuff that I've learned overcoming my own crap, you know, I've been able to take and turn it into something great. I'll tell you one of the coolest things I do in one of my keynote speeches, though. The last thing I do in one of my big keynote speeches is I go out in my audience and I choose the most timid person I can find, and I bring them to the stage and I put them in front of 1,000 people, right? So now they're freaking out, right? And then I start talking about fishing. And in the process of talking about fishing, I say, I'm going to teach you how to cast a fishing rod. And I hand them a bullwhip. All right. And so in under 5 minutes time talking about fishing,
you're trying to make this person explode.
Well, they're freaking out, right? But what I'm doing is I'm addressing their fears as they come. First thing they do is they hit the stage. I say, she came to the stage, isn't she a rock star? So she's getting all this positive reinforcement. I'm talking about fishing because I don't want them thinking about whips. I want them thinking about calm, serene, easy instead of, you know, pain, danger, or frisky Friday night. I want them thinking more, more, you know, in what I want them to think about, right?
Oh, Jesus.
Right. So once I get them into that space, then it's easy. Once they crack the whip, the next thing they do is I get them to actually hit targets out of my hand. In under 5 minutes, they go from never having cracked it to hitting targets out of my hand with the bullwhip.
How's your hand looking, buddy?
It's fine. Totally fine.
Yeah.
Well, of course, you know, that's a given joke, right? Yeah, it's like, yeah, you almost have to. Actually, I've never been hit, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you the big secret. The big secret is the whole time I'm dealing with them, my whole job is to address their fear, right? So their first fear is being in front of people. So I get the audience to give them applause, right? Once I get them to crack the whip, their biggest fear is that they're still going to look bad. So I start giving positive reinforcement for that. I pull out the target. I hold out the target. Now they have a new fear. Their new fear is they're going to hurt me. So I say to them, I promise you're not going to hurt me. You know, when you're leading somebody through something like that, you got to lie to them. Right. And so basically I take that fear out, and then I say, just look right there and cast your fishing rod. and they go kapow, and they hit it every time. And in fact, if you go to my website, corporateactionhero.com, you look at the promo video on the homepage, in the middle of that video, you'll see like 4 or 5 women taking targets out of my hand with their whip. By the way, I learned a long time ago, choose women for that bit, because a man will get on there and his testosterone will kick in and it'll almost kill me.
Jesus.
Yeah. That's the thing. We're learning about like what different groups do in the workplace. Like, and that is the thing. Like, guys are going to be like, puff out the chest and want to be alpha. You know, like they never want to be in a dodgy situation or look like they're out of control. And, you know, women would just be like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah. Well, and you know, what's really interesting is over the course of the years, women have been the ones who've gotten everything done. You know, they're the ones who actually do the majority of the work, and it's usually the men doing the posturing. You know, it's like you have the CEO who's like, I'm the CEO, but right below him, there's 15 women who are doing all this amazing work, right? Usually. And what I find interesting is when I bring a woman to the stage, and I always choose a timid woman. I always choose the most timid one I can find, because I don't want them to be the class clown. I don't want them to be somebody who's funny. I want them to be somebody who, number one, has never done it, because then I can give them a life-changing experience. But number two, that audience knows that they're a timid person. And that's a much more effective message to show that I can take the most timid person they know and have them do something like that in 5 minutes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, because, you know, it kind of goes into psychology to a degree, but yeah.
Well, it's totally leveraging the present moment. Because if you think about it from the conscious and the subconscious mind, you know, there's only one moment they can actually do anything, and if you can get this moment doing something, then you can have a successful outcome. But no successful outcome has ever magically appeared in your present moment. You know, you have to do the small steps here to get to that.
Well, what you're doing there on the stage is kind of similar to our friend Dr. Dave Hill. He's a hypnotist, so he'll look into the crowd. He'll see like, okay, that person's eyeballing me out of it. They want to be hypnotized. I'm not going to pick them, because they're just going to fake everything, or they're going to be like, "Didn't work on me, bro." So you have to find someone that's in like a kind of like yourself, what you're saying, like a timid person, someone who's like not really wanting to go up, but you know, once they're up there, they'll be comfortable. So.
Well, once they're up there, they're only comfortable if you can manage their fear for them, because it's sensory overload. When they hit the stage, they're going to be like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!"
I'm on stage, yeah.
Right, and so, you know, once you get them into that kind of space of okay, they love you already, you're already good, then what happens is that you have this entirely different experience for them.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I'd love to try it. do what you're doing, or like try the fucking whip thing. But I feel like it would really be like, I'm going to be the first lad to nail this guy's hands.
Well, and then see that if that's what you believe, then that's what will happen.
Well, that's why we'll never do it.
But the thing is, you got to realize belief is a choice. You can choose to believe something different.
Very true. I want to be the first guy to hit this guy's hands.
But with the whole COVID situation, John, how have you been getting on? All safe?
Say it again?
With the whole COVID situation in the States, how have you been getting on?
Well, it's interesting. You know, just like when my back went out and I had to deal with the mental flexibility, my job, my career is based on being in rooms with people. You know, I'm a keynote speaker now, and even when I'm doing fight stuff, all the film sets got shut down, all the stages got shut down, and all of the keynote speeches that I would do got shut down. But I could easily get into the mindset of this sucks and I'm done, or I could say, okay, what am I going to do now? What am I going to change? So I upped my video game. I started building online courses, which are going to happen in about 6 months. You know, I'm really making sure they're right before I release them. But, you know, I just took the time and I started creating different things. So when we finally come out of COVID and we're here in the States, you know, we had it bad, and I think we're on track. By end of summer, we should be coming back to normal. which is good. But by the end of the summer, when we start coming back to normal, I'm going to go back to doing live events, but I'm still going to be able to do virtual events. I'm going to have also these online programs to sell. So I'm going to come out of COVID much better off than I went in. So, it's a matter of leveraging your adversity to your own advantage.
Mm. Yeah. And were you doing these podcasts beforehand, or?
I was. I did a daily video, but it was, I say daily. Back then it was probably once a week. Right now they're daily. I put out a daily video on YouTube every day, and so that plus I'm doing podcasts. I'm doing, and as over the past I would say 2 months, I've become a popular podcast guest. So I'm called out to do all kinds of podcasts, like all over the place now. So I'm doing like sometimes 6 or 7 a week now.
Oh, wow.
And so that in itself, from a marketing standpoint, that's great, because the more airtime I get, the more marketing I get.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I know other people who do what you're doing there, but they're dodgy fuckers. We had one guy on fairly recently. He's doing something similar. But,
dodgy in what way?
Dodgy in the flat earth kind of way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're one of those guys. But that's a different story. That's a very different story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything that I've been through in my life, with all the back injuries and the stunt work, and learning skills that I never thought I could learn, all of those things have brought me to a place in my life where, when I go out, my big goal when I go speak is to help people find their own inner strength and their own, way of getting through things themselves. And if I can do that now, then I've achieved more in my career than I ever did as a stage performer or stuntman, because I'm bettering the world in a much broader way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like a lot of people don't know their own strengths. Like they, what's crazy to me is sometimes people don't even know how to talk about themselves. Like, you know yourself better than anyone else, ideally. What's the story here? If a conversation with someone can't go past, how you doing, or what's up,
Right.
Yeah,
it's so interesting. Being a speaker and a performer, and specifically a Renaissance Festival performer, where you're in a park and thousands of people are coming by, and your job is to interact with as many as you can. You kind of lose that sort of apprehension to talk to people. And so when you're gonna laugh at this one. So when we went to the Middle East, the first thing they told us, they took us out into one of the cities in Qatar. They took us to the main city there, and to the shopping district. And as we're leaving, they say, we have to give you the rules of the road here. He says, don't look at a woman, and don't look at a man for too long, or he'll take you as a challenge and want to fight you. All right. So now, being an entertainer, being someone who is very, out there anyway, I'm one of those guys who always wants to go, hey, how are you? And walking up to people. And so I found myself walking through the city, starting to do that and stopping myself and trying not to look at people. It was really, really kind of strange. And then, I don't know if you know this or not, but the Arab nations have a strange fascination with certain movies. And one of the movies they have a really, really strange fascination with is the Titanic, with Leonardo DiCaprio. And we walked into a cologne/perfume shop, and they had all these perfumes on the wall, and they had like a series that were like from the Titanic, and like they had one that was literally called "Manly Man on the Titanic," and it had a picture of Leonardo DiCaprio on it, right? and then they had another one that said "Titanic Adorable Lady," and that had Kate Winslet on it, right? And so it was like all this stuff. It was like this weird fascination. And my comedy partner at the time, he's like, "Manly Man on the Titanic, that'd be a great joke thing to bring home." He said, "But I'm not going to buy it if it doesn't smell good." So he gets it and he sprays it on his hand. And he starts smelling it. right? And he's smelling his left hand, right? And then he realizes that another thing they told us before we left: don't do anything with your left hand, because in the Arab countries, they don't use toilet paper; they use their left hand, and so you don't shake hands with your left hand, you don't touch with your left hand, and you don't do anything with your left hand. So here's my comedy partner in a shop doing this. Literally sniffing his left hand. And the whole place is like giving him looks. And then the other comedian with us doesn't realize it either. He says, "What's it smell like?" And grabs his left hand and puts it in front of his own nose. and the military guys came over and stopped us very quickly. Took us back to the car and then made us stand about 20 feet away from the car where they swept the car for bombs. But it was it was an interesting experience going over there. But the whole manly man on the Titanic story will live forever in infamy.
Yeah. Then he used to said so casually at the end, like checking the bomb for cars or checking the car for bombs, the other way around. Geez, the alternative is even more terrifying.
He literally was carrying a mirror on a telescope in his back pocket, and he'd pull it out and he'd walk the perimeter of the car, looking underneath the car to make sure nobody planted the bomb while we were in the market.
Dodgy stuff, man.
Wow. Oh yeah, there were some interesting things. We actually, when I was in Ramadi, Iraq, they put us in these huts. They called them the I forget what they called this, the bed chambers. But they had a weird name for them. But basically what they were was the shipping containers you see bringing cargo across the ocean, right? They turn them into bedrooms. And then they have the ones that they turn into bathrooms, they call them the Cadillacs. And so we're getting ready for bed, and I go over to the Cadillac to go use the Cadillac. And I'm sitting there, and I'm brushing my teeth. And I look up, and stuck in the wall above my mirror is an unexploded rocket-propelled grenade. Right? And I went out and I said, "You know that's in there?" And he said, "Oh yeah, it's been there a couple of weeks. The EOD guys haven't come over to get it yet." Explosive ordnance devices, right?
I think you're the first man I've heard that has multiple stories of bombs.
Oh
yeah.
Like, it's really
definitely.
Don't see a problem with that. Like, that's just crazy. That.
Well, you want to hear another couple more cool stories?
Sure.
Fuck it.
So when you go over as a USO performer, they give you the rank of a full bird colonel. So basically, they give us what's GS 15, Government Service 15 status. So we had like lieutenant colonels saluting us, and like we were like big deal. But one of the things they do is they try to give you guys, the USO performers, they try to thank us by showing us cool things. So they took us to the range and let us shoot all the different kinds of guns and do all that kind of stuff. And then the U-2 spy plane, I don't know if you know about the U-2, it flies literally suborbital. It flies up in space, basically. The pilot actually wears a space suit, has to eat his food through a straw, through a vacuum chamber in the mask. They fly for 24 hours. But when they land, they come into the runway, and the pilot in the spacesuit can't really see very well left or right. And so what they do is they take the plane, and as it's coming into the runway, they take a Chevy Camaro and they run it out on the runway at over 100 miles an hour. And the plane comes in and lands over top of that Camaro. And the Camaro tracks it down the runway, and the guy in the Camaro's got a headset on. He's going a little more to your left, a little more to your right, more to your left. He's basically guiding him down the runway, right? Wow. And they gave us the opportunity to ride in the Camaro. So we got to see the U-2 come in right over top of us and land and run down the runway. That was one. The other story I was telling Thomas before we got on about we were flying Black Hawk helicopters, and they did this what they call the Nap of the Earth ride. We had never heard of this before, but we were just flying along. And if you've ever really flown in a helicopter, most of the time it is a boring ride. It is perfectly flat, and you're just driving straight. You're not really doing all the crazy stuff you see on the movies, right? So we're sitting there, we're kind of bored like this, and I look out and I can see that there's a mountaintop coming, and we're going to get really close to this mountaintop. I was like, cool, something cool to see, really close to the mountaintop. And he comes to the top of the mountain, and he gets just past the peak, and he throws the tail of the helicopter straight in the air and falls off the cliff. Now we're in full free fall on a helicopter, comes down to the bottom of the valley, and he levels off at 100 feet off the ground. And now he's following the level of the ground, and he's following the valley. So he's banking hard left and right. I have a video of panning my camera to my left and seeing sky, panning it to my right and seeing dirt because the helicopter was sideways. And we rode this whole thing out, came out the other side, and we're like, you can hear us on the tape. We're screaming, woo! We're screaming like we're on a roller coaster. And we come out the other side. And so I say to the pilot, I said, how far off the ground were we? He says, officially, we were 300 feet off the ground, sir. But we were 100 easy. He was not going to let anybody know he went below the 300 mark. But yeah, it was. So that was, we had so many cool things that we got a chance to do when we were over there. And they showed us so many cool things. It was so fun.
It sounds terrifying, but awesome at the same time.
Oh yeah. We also did a combat landing in Baghdad where when you're landing in a normal plane, you have that nice long run right up to the runway. The combat landing, they get you over top of the landing zone and corkscrew you down because you're harder to hit in the corkscrew pattern than in a long straight line. And so we were flying in to Baghdad, and on the way in, this lieutenant colonel from the Air Force was on the plane with me. He's like, we're gonna do a combat landing. And he was all nervous. I was like, this is the Air Force guy. He's all nervous about this, right? So we start the combat landing, and it was just basically a long corkscrew down, and then we landed. I didn't think any of it. He started puking because it hit him that bad. It's just really cool. Another one, we flew in Afghanistan. We flew into a base called Rocket City, and they call it Rocket City because every night they fire rockets from the Hindu Kush Mountains into the base, and we spent the night on that base, which was an interesting evening. But when we landed at that base, we're flying in, and the plane we're in is like literally just barely above the mountaintops. I mean, we could look out the windows, and it was right there. And then he comes over the last mountain. He dips down and lands on a dirt runway. And I said to the pilot, why were you flying so low to the mountains? He says, well, if we stay close to the mountains, the sun heats the mountains up, and that stops the heat-seeking missiles from hitting us.
I mean, like,
thanks for sharing. That was good.
That's so crazy. Like, that's like the reality those lads are facing
every day.
constantly.
Every day.
It ain't easy.
Jesus, man.
No.
Christ.
Yeah,
I mean, you've got some crazy stories, and you're not even there like all the time. Like you do. Would you say you do like 3-day shows at a time? Like,
You mean when I did the USO tours?
yeah.
When I did the USO tours from 2001 to 2006, and we would usually do one show a day. But like on Easter Sunday, we did 3 that day.
Oh wow.
But we would go and we work every day. We wouldn't get a day off. We would go for like 50 days straight. So, we'd go for 2 months, basically.
Wow.
We'd go over and every day we'd work and then we'd come home. Right. But it was, like I said, I said this before, it was totally worth it. It was totally, I would do it again tomorrow. No doubt.
Jeez. John, I love you, man. You're so fucking cool. Jesus, dude.
you're doing everything. You're doing fucking everything. Yeah.
But I think we've wasted enough of your time.
Wasted.
To come wasted it, man.
Well, I
appreciate terrific.
I appreciate having you guys interview me. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope that you enjoyed it as well.
Oh, we did. But John, if people want to go check you out, where can they find you?
Easiest way to find me, corporateactionhero.com. And if you go there, you're going to find my LinkedIn, you're going to find my Facebook, you're going to find all the other stuff. On that page, you're going to find a daily vlog. I put out a daily video every day. You're going to find my podcast. Links are on there. And if your audience wants, I can share with you. I have a workbook called the 5F workbook. If they want to go through their own process of getting through their junk, I'll make sure you guys get a link so you can share that free gift with your audience.
There we go.
It's right on my profile on Podmatch. So if you want to grab it there. But yeah, just share it with your audience. It's a free gift. And let me say this. I said the word free, which means I'm not even going to ask you for your email address. This is a gift. You go there, you download it. It's not about me getting something from you. It's about me giving something to you.
Yeah. You're a goddamn king. You know. But anyway, if you want to check him out, you know where to find him. And if you got this far, fair play to you. So yeah, as we say, take it handy and stay away from yourself. Top of the morning, lads and ladies. Support for the Awfully Irish podcast is now brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming.
Manscaped offers precision engineered tools for your family jewels, and you're no longer need the look of the Irish with the ladies. Manscaped just launched in Ireland. We've gone years without using the right tools for the job. You can now be one of the first men in Ireland to experience their life-changing products.
Your balls will thank you.
Get 20% off and free shipping with the code IrishPod at manscaped.com.
That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code IrishPod.